Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a good climate change festival. I'm just going to straight away. I'm going to introduce Monica Bulmer and Laura Fisher. Monica's put together this fantastic presentation, and hopefully we'll do it justice. And Laura Fisher is our MRF supervisor at our recycling plant in Reading. She and I are going to give you a presentation today. So the purpose of our presentation today is around recycling versus climate change and what people can do. From a practical point of view, really, to do their bit. You can see on this slide here the range of different organisations that are involved in the Climate Change Festival, and we're really proud to be part of that as well. So without further ado, we will, like he said, letting a few more people in, we'll get going. So a bit of housekeeping. As you can probably tell already, I'm not the world's best user of Zoom, but we will keep everyone muted while we go through the presentation. There'll be plenty of time for questions afterwards. If you've got any kind of burning questions or you want to make a comment, by all means use the chat facility, and we will sort of scroll down that when we get to the end and make sure that no one gets missed. You can use the menus there during the question and answer bits at the end. And I think that's probably it for the moment. I just want to say, actually, I mean, it's probably worth letting everyone know, just for the purposes of fairness, that this is being recorded, and it's being recorded only just so that we can make it available to people afterwards who perhaps couldn't be here for this session. So just so you're aware. So what is RE3? RE3 is 3 councils working together with our contractor FCC Environment. We manage the waste of about 450,000 people from the 3 boroughs, Bracknell Forest, Reading and Wokingham. We've got 2 principal sites, one in Reading and one in Bracknell. They're quite popular, so people tell us, and they're very busy. And you can see some pictures there of the sorts of activities that are going on. The larger of the 2 sites is our site in Reading, where we've got our recycling plant. But they're both incredibly busy, as you can imagine, just 2 sites for that many people. We were working out the other day that probably over the life of this contract, it's a 25-year contract, it's going to be about 4.5 million tonnes probably of waste that have been handled, which is quite a lot. And that quite nicely fits into the kind of theme of today. So moving on, what are you going to learn about today? We're going to talk about recycling in the context of our emissions and our kind of wider climate impact. We're going to talk about how those sorts of activities can support sort of moderating and perhaps mitigating a little bit the climate crisis through everyday actions. We're going to talk about what we do with your waste. So, excuse me. I think this is a really good point to make. We've kind of, previous to the last couple of years, there was some logic to the discussion that people often have around, you know, is the climate crisis too big for people to get their head round? Does it make it almost impossible for people to feel like they can get any agency or do anything to help? But the kind of uncertainties that I'm certainly not drawing any sort of false equivalence between the 2 things, but the kind of uncertainties that we've had to live with over the last sort of 18 months to 2 years are probably a really good way of us getting our heads around what we are going to have to do and the changes we are probably going to have to make in order to be successful in our sort of approach to climate change. We've all done things that we previously probably would not have thought would become completely normal. And that really is the kind of thought for the day, I suppose, in terms of climate change, that if we can do it in that case, then we can certainly do it again. So turning around to the specific practicalities, these are the sort of big ticket items that we can recycle through our curbside collections on a day-to-day basis. Feels like way back now, but way back in 2016, before the world changed, we widened out the range of plastics that we could recycle to include things like cartons. We certainly weren't the first, but we widened it out to include things like cartons, pots, tubs and trays, margarine tubs, those sorts of things, alongside plastic bottles. And then we've also got food and drink cans, aerosols, foil trays, those sorts of things. They're in the, yeah, please recycle bracket and seem to be going quite well. We've also then got newspaper card, cereal packets, those sorts of things. So those are all the sorts of things that you can have recycled from home. And the one message still, it's getting better and better. Supermarkets are gradually reducing the number of black trays that there are. We still don't want those. And really anyone who is putting their recycling in a black carrier bag or black plastic bag, sorry, please don't do that. We'll come to why that is a bit later on. But that's the no-no, if you like, at this stage. So to get everyone involved, and if I can drive this, we will do a quick poll. So there's our question. How many perfectly recyclable plastic items, i.e. bottles, pots, tubs, trays, are discarded into a rubbish bin instead of recycling by an average household across re3 every week? Now I'm going to start the poll. There we go. I think I might be the only person who can see the voting, possibly. I'm sure I am, but it's quite interesting. Right, okay, let's end the poll. Share results. So if you guys can see that, 3 people said that there were 3 items. They're the optimists. At the other end of the scale, there were 30 people who thought that there were 23 items that ultimately go in the wrong bin every week. And in the middle, 22 of you said it's 13. And it is 13. So I suppose it's quite good, really, that we had some optimists. But it is 13, and I would stress this is on average. So I without wishing to be too kind to you guys because you're here talking to us today, but I guess you probably aren't missing 13 items. But obviously, across the whole of that 450,000 population and our 3 boroughs, there are people who perhaps aren't doing nearly as much as they possibly could do. So that's really our task, I suppose, is to try and get that average number down as much as we possibly can, and try and drive out as much of these types of material from our residual waste, what we're going to throw away effectively. And that's why it's important, sort of, I suppose, to stress those things that we can recycle so that people are aware of exactly what they can do. So that was quite an interesting little process. So these are the other items. So there are about 3 cans, 2 steel tins, a large cardboard box. They're also equivalents of things that are being thrown away that really could be being recycled on, as it says, by an average household on a weekly basis. So we're doing a really, really good job, generally speaking, and the residents from the 3 areas have really stepped up of late. And we'll talk about the recycling rates a little bit later. So so everyone's doing a really good job, but it is just around, it's not even really around the margins. It's just making sure that we all do that bit better. And I think that's perhaps why things like the Climate Change Festival are so good, because they do give us an opportunity to remind everyone where we are, to talk about these sorts of things, and to keep the progress going. So this next section kind of looks at a scenario really well. If we were able to recycle all of those things as an individual, if we managed to completely capture all of that notional maximum per household or as an individual every year, we could help to remove the equivalent of 62 kilograms of CO2 from the environment, which is pretty impressive, really. And that's what we would all be able to do at an individual level. But of course, the really important thing about the environment is that we're all here, we're all in the environment. And if those average figures tell us anything, it's that we can't all just, it's a kind of interesting contradiction, which is that we've all got to do our own individual bit, but actually it won't make any difference unless all of the individuals do their collective bit. So if we were all across the RE3 area able to capture all those items, we'd end up being able to remove the equivalent of 12,000 tons of CO2. So that's really impressive. That would be an incredible achievement for recycling, and the equivalent of 6,000 cars taken off the road. So that's really where we've got to aim for. Those ultimately relatively small individualized sort of actions which add up to something much bigger. And we're not saying that we'd have cracked it, we'd have saved climate change at that point, but it would make a contribution. And it is a contribution we can all make. So it sort of begs the question, why aren't we really? So just a bit of a kind of sense of what happens if we don't recycle. We all, I'm sure you all understand that one of the principal reasons for recycling is that we don't just want to throw stuff away. We don't just want to have so little kind of respect for raw materials and for the resources that are available to us. Recycling means that we can stop digging up bauxite, or we can, you know, we don't need to use oil to make new plastics or something like that. And then it's not even just those resources; it's the energy and all the extra emissions that go in driving stuff around and making new products. Here, as we say, the loss of energy in those processes. Recycling invariably is a more energy efficient sort of overall process, certainly in terms of things like materials like aluminium. And then perhaps almost a bit of an old school, in some ways, important message still though, around landfill. We've done a great job as 3 councils and more generally elsewhere too in reducing our reliance on landfill. We're down to somewhere around 10 or 12% when we were comfortably in the 70s when we started this contract. And we know that once waste goes into landfill, it's generating methane, and we obviously all know that that's a significant contributor to climate change. So some examples here of natural resources and how they can be saved. So as we see here, a ton of plastic can save up to 16 barrels of oil. Recycled cardboard, 17 trees. So together we're in we're able to, and we're in the business of being able to avoid that reliance on sort of virgin resources and new resources. And as I say, we've got the opportunity through the collections that the councils put on, and then crucially through the processing that is done at RE3, which Laura will talk about in a moment, which gets those materials when they're collected in a mixed form, as you all know, and puts them in a form which are more readily recycled. So my last slide, I just wanted to give you a quick advert really for the sort of climate change calculator that Monica's put together, which is really good. Now, if you can see the QR code there, that will take you through to the climate change calculator, and you can see a screenshot of it here. Now, I will say to you, rather like a teacher in front of a class, don't go and do it now. Wait till the end. But it is quite interesting, and it will give you a sense of again, that idea of individual actions adding up to something significant. And now I'm going to hand over to Laura, who is going to explain what we do here at re3 and more besides. So Laura, all over to you.
Thanks, Oliver. Hi, everyone. So yes, I'm Laura and I work for FCC Environment, which is the contractor which works in conjunction with the re3 councils to provide you, the residents, with your recycling and waste solutions. So this is what shouldn't be put in your recycling. So I'm sure that a lot of you already know some of these things, but there are a few bits in here that may surprise some people possibly, or that you can remind your neighbours of. So black bags, like Oliver said, that is one thing that tends to come through quite a lot. And sometimes people will put their recycled material, which we want, inside black or plastic bags. So great that we're getting the recycling, but unfortunately we don't need it to be bagged up. We'd much rather it be loose, clean and dry, like Oliver mentioned. Black trays is a ongoing problem, but like Oliver mentioned, supermarkets are getting so much better at reducing black trays on their shelves, so hopefully soon that problem will be gone. Polystyrene, we don't want broken drinking glasses. We don't want, so you can't put those into your glass banks either, just because they all, the glass bottles and then drinking style glasses and cookware glass, they melt at different temperatures. So they can't be put together to be recycled, unfortunately. Plastic film and wrapping, food pouches, we don't want. Nappies and sanitary products, we definitely don't want. Not only is it not very pleasant for the staff who go through the rubbish on the conveyor belts, but it also can contaminate the good materials. If somebody puts in lots of nice clean cardboard and plastic bottles, then the next one over puts in a nappy. If that all gets contaminated, then unfortunately we can't use any of the good material. Broken toys, we don't want those, but you can now take them to your recycling centre if they're plastic, because we started doing rigid plastics at the recycling centres, so you can take them there. Crisp packets are a no, but I think you can still post them back to walkers, I believe. And wipes and tissues and pet poo and litter, again, same sort of issues as we have with the nappies and sanitary products. They contaminate all of the material and we can't recycle them anyway through the MRF. So when you put things in the wrong bin, it impacts the quality of the recyclables that are going through our plant. So 16% of the waste in re3 bins and bags is classed as contamination. So that's about 5,000 tonnes per year, which is quite a lot of contamination. If we were to process the amount of waste, it would take up the equivalent of 15 days of operating the MRF to sort good material. So in that sense, we're losing 15 days of sorting out the good plastics to have to deal with the contamination that people are putting in their bins. And also it then creates unnecessary haulage between transfer stations and our materials recycling facility. And those excess miles are going to contribute to CO2 in the atmosphere, which is going to add to the climate change problem that we have. So you can see some pictures here that we've got from actual bins. So you can see there's a shoe in the top one. Somebody's put a black bag in one. We've got some buckets and some hard plastics, and then bagged waste as well. So like we said, in those bags might be the world's best recycling, which we would love to have. But if it's inside of a bag, then when it goes through the sorting process, the extremely intelligent machines that we have can't see the materials inside of the bags. So therefore it gets sent to the wrong place. I suppose the right place in the sense that the bag isn't recyclable, but the items inside the bag don't get sent to their rightful place to be recycled. So if you're in doubt about what you can recycle, then you can download the fantastic re Recyclopedia app. I never say right, re3 Recyclopedia app. I'm not sure if that's the right way to say it, but yeah, Monica created this and it's incredible. So again, you can scan the QR code if you don't already have it, and you can download the app, and it gives you all the information on what can be recycled, where you can put it. Can you put it in your home bin? Do you need to take it to a clothes bank, for example, or to the glass bin? You can also access the booking system if you'd like to come to the recycling centre and bring some of your other items there, like scrap metal or rigid plastics. So yeah, really great app. So so I think Monica sends the slides out to people. So if you miss the QR code on here, then make sure you grab it when the slides go out. So another poll, what percentage of our recyclable plastic is recycled in the UK? I'm hoping that Oliver will. There we go. So your choices is 100% of the plastic is recycled in the UK, just under 75%, less than 25%, and nothing, everything goes somewhere abroad.
It's Friday afternoon, and there are quite a few people who are not very optimistic. People should be feeling a lot more optimistic on a Friday afternoon. Right. There you go, Laura.
Here we go. So I can't see how many people it was, but I can just see the percentages. So thankfully, a small percentage of people said nothing. So just 5% of you thought that nothing stays in the UK and that everything gets sent abroad. 48%, which I think is the highest, said that less than 25% of your plastics is recycled in the UK. Just under 75%, that was 38 of you, that's a good number. And then 9% said 100%, so that's the optimistic 9%. And there we go, 100%. So the 9% of people that got it right, congratulations, 5 people. Well, that's great, it's 5 people that confident in what we do. So yes, we send 100% of your plastics that you put in your bin stays here in the UK and is made into a new product. So last year we recycled just over 2,500 tonnes of plastic, and that's an 82% increase in plastic recycling over the last 3 years. So you may remember when we introduced the pots, tubs and trays a few years ago. That's helped us to keep even more material in the UK, recycle even more of your plastics, which you guys are working so hard to put in the right place. And we want you to know that when you're giving it to us, we're looking after it responsibly and making sure that it's used as best as it can and turned into something useful. So it gets washed and pelletized here in the UK, and then the same people that do that will then make it into a new product. So that could be something like a food container, for example. They make a lot of those. So when you buy a box of chocolates with the little molds for the different chocolates in, that, for example, is one of the items that they make, along with many other things. But again, all in the UK. So what happens to the rest of your recycling? So while recycling happens all over the world, we at re3 want to put as much recycling into the UK as we can. So every off-taker that we send to is monitored and audited, and they have regular checks by us to make sure that what they're doing with your material is the right thing. Over 90% of our recycled off-takers are based here in the UK, which is great. So that's saving us emissions. So we're not having to send things abroad, we're not having to get on boats or anything like that. As much as we can keep here in the UK, and definitely as local as possible, is the best ideal for us. And like I say, all the plastics here in the UK. We also, very exciting, we announced this on Monday. I'm not sure if anyone would have seen this already, but we have just installed England's first MRF robotic picker. So this is the first of its type to be used here in England. It uses artificial intelligence technology to successfully pick up to 55 successful picks per minute, and it's going to help us to improve efficiency and improve quality of the material that you guys are putting into your bins. So it works with a camera, so sort of how a human would see. It can identify materials on the belt, and it then is programmed to put the materials into the correct position. So you can see on the side of the conveyor belt there's some black bins. So the different types of material will go into those bins depending on what the robot recognizes it as. So it's very exciting, I say, first of its kind here in England. So it's a really exciting project that re3 have taken on. and we're looking forward to sharing with you over the next few weeks and months how it's getting on. So there's a video now all about how the materials recycling facility works. I think Oliver's going to play.
I am.
re3 is a partnership between Bracknell Forest, Reading and Wokingham, and we're here to help you waste less and recycle more so that your waste is managed in the most efficient way. re3 serves approximately 183,000 households on a daily basis, so we can turn your waste into new items, saving important energy and natural resources.
We're making recycling easier than ever before, and we have crews working hard every day to make sure that not just your waste is picked up, but all your recycling is properly sorted so we can get things back into use and not waste them in landfill sites.
We're very thankful to everyone who is regularly filling up their boxes with recycling. Recycling decreases the need to extract new resources from forests, oil reserves and mines to make products and packaging. This means less energy is consumed to manufacture and transport products and their packaging.
At re3, we are very grateful to our residents. We want to say thank you for all the recycling you have been doing over the past year and more. That little extra, that one item a day, will bring home a better return to the climate change we are trying to save.
All collected recycling from the 3 councils comes here to the re3 material recycling facility in Reading, where it's all weighed in and weighed out. Your plastic bottles, yoghurt pots, cans, cardboard and newspapers enter the facility through a hopper, and there start a life-changing journey over hundreds of metres of conveyor belts. First, bulky materials or glass that might damage the machine are separated by hand. After that, the waste enters a trommel, which is an enormous drum with holes of different sizes in it, which sorts waste one from the other. We then use large magnets to separate steel cans, which are magnetic, from aluminium cans, which aren't. Next, your plastic and paper is screened by optical sorters that use near-infrared technology and act like electronic eyes. The optical sorters identify between paper and plastic by bouncing light off the items as they travel down a conveyor belt at up to 3 meters per second. Then the materials are sorted by hand, completing over 90% of the job already done by machines. Our team will do their best to pick up black trays, film, carrier bags and any other item that shouldn't be there in the first place. Eventually all the materials are separated, they fall into bunkers and then are sent to be baled. Each bale weighs between 300 and 600 kilograms depending on the type of material. They're then loaded and sent to different reprocessors. Producing a high quality of recycling is our priority, so that product manufacturers can turn your waste into quality new products. Your recycling is only sent to responsible companies who are audited regularly, and a great majority of it is recycled in the UK, including 100% of your plastics. Recycling is in your hands. Each of us can do a bit more, and even the smallest actions can have big impacts.
So while we here at re3 recycle as much of your waste as possible, if there is anything that we can't recycle, then we do have to put that somewhere. So the majority of your non-recyclable waste will go to an energy from waste plant, and this burns your waste to create heat, which creates steam to turn a turbine, which then creates electricity and energy. So the waste that we send it to a place called Lakeside, which is just on the motorway. If you go into Heathrow, you might have seen it. And that plant creates enough energy to power the entirety of Slough. So that shows just how much power your non-recyclable waste and how much of a difference it can have. We do also, unfortunately, not everything can be recycled, not everything can be sent to an energy from waste plant. So some of it is sent to landfill, but we are currently sending less than 10% to landfill sites. And I'm sure Oliver will correct me if I've got this wrong, but I know that at the start of the contract, it was around 70%, was it, Oliver, that was going to landfill? And now we're down to less than 10%. So that's just in a few years, I think 11 or 12 years. Again, I might be wrong, I wasn't here all the time. But yeah, so in just that short amount of time, we've managed to reduce it from 70 to less than 10. And we hope that obviously we can reduce that further and further, because more and more companies are finding things that they can do with materials, more ways to recycle things. You know, technology is incredible at the moment, as you've seen by us having a robot put into our facility. You know, the possibilities are endless with what we can do with waste, and we hope that one day it would be a dream, wouldn't it, that everything could be recycled in one way or another. So another poll, this one is about food waste. So what do you, our lovely residents, think about the food waste collection? There we go. So I really like it. I was skeptical about it initially, but now I really like this service. I'm not sure, don't really use it. I'm not keen and don't recycle my food. This service wasn't offered to me. So if you can pick an option there.
Okay. There we go.
Fabulous. So what's great to see is that nobody selected the option that said I'm not keen and I don't recycle my food. So that's great. A small amount of people, 3%, this service wasn't offered to me, which is a shame. But I know that there's some issues with flats and stuff like that, so maybe that's why it wasn't offered. But thankfully, most people selected. 75% of you said I really like it, and there was another 15%, so 90% of people agreed that now they really like it and they're using it, even if 15% were skeptical about it initially, which is a great number. Really exciting to see. So food waste. So now all of the households across the 3 councils, so Bracknell Forest, Reading and Wokingham, are now able to collect and send their food waste for recycling instead of rotting it in landfill, which is brilliant. And that extra helping of having food waste recycled has now helped all the RE3 councils to exceed a 50% recycling rate. So thanks to you guys recycling your food waste, we're now helping to reach our target of the recycling rate by 2030, I believe it is. So what should be inside your food waste bin? So anything that's been left on the plate, any leftover pet food, which is great. Any dairy products, bread, meat and bones. If you don't use them to make a broth or anything like that, you can put them in there. Tea bags and coffee grounds. Any raw vegetables, cooked vegetables, your peelings from your carrots and your potatoes, your banana peel. Any fish, any rice, pasta, beans, and then your oil. So you can pour your oil into a plastic bottle, seal it and place it inside of your food waste caddy as well. So more or less anything, I think, is on that list. You know, anything that you guys can think of that's been on your plate that you've eaten can go into your food waste.
And we should add, we're not suggesting you have leftover pet food on your plate. They're different things, promise.
So some top food waste recycling tips from us. So recycle your food waste regularly. So I'm assuming that people's food waste bins might fill up pretty quick. Maybe they filled up a bit quicker at the beginning and it kind of showed you how much food you're wasting, and that maybe that's reduced a little bit now. But as soon as your food waste gets near the lid, make sure that you empty out as soon as possible. Lock the bigger food bin so you don't get pests and foxes and whatever getting into your bin. I can't see the last bullet point for some reason on my.
It says, by recycling your food waste weekly, your refuse bin will be cleaner and less smelly.
Perfect, which is a great tip. Use liners supplied by your council to put inside of your food waste bin. So again, you don't have the smell. If you run out, you can use any other types of bags. So carry bags or bread bags. Bread bags are a good one because lots of us have those anyway. So you can reuse those by using them for your food waste. So you don't need to use compostable bags either. So you don't have to go out and spend any special money getting compostable bags because all bags are removed at the beginning of the process anyway, which is why we can use things like carrier bags and bread bags. Make sure that you take food from its packaging. So if you have something in your bin, like I don't know, a packet of ham that's gone off, take the ham out of the packaging and recycle the packaging separately from the food waste. And that even includes compostable ones as well. Remember to, sorry, I don't know, cut off half my slide again, Oliver, sorry.
I'm on mute. Yes, remember to scrape all your uneaten food. It can be recycled as well. So ready meals, again, remove them from the packaging, but anything you've got really, that can all go in.
Perfect, thank you. So the power of food recycling, if you fill your caddy of food waste entirely, then you generate enough electricity to boil the kettle 9 times and to watch 20 hours of whatever your favorite TV show is. So huge amount of electricity is generated there. So there's another video.
Food waste has a big impact on the environment. If it ends up in landfill sites, it rots and releases methane, a harmful greenhouse gas. The best thing we can do with our food is to enjoy it, but some waste, like banana skins, orange peel, bones, tea bags and plate scrapings, are inevitable, and these can all be recycled and turned into electricity. So, have you ever wondered how it is recycled? Your food waste is collected weekly by the crews and taken to the re3 transfer stations in Bracknell or Reading. Then we load it into a large container and take it to a nearby anaerobic digestion facility. Food waste is tipped into a bunker and put through the depackaging system that removes all types of liners. This waste is later sent to an energy from waste facility where it is safely incinerated to create electricity. The macerated food waste is then transferred to the huge on-site digestion tanks where there is no oxygen. Stirrers keep it moving, and over an 85-day period, the food waste starts to break down, creating biogas. This gas, rich in methane, is captured and converted into electricity on site, which is fed to the national grid, so can be used to power our homes. That's not all. As the food waste is breaking down, it also creates a nutritious fertiliser called digestate, which is spread on local farmland to grow more food, perfectly closing the recycling loop. Remember, no amount is too small. Recycling food waste is a powerful process, and you can be a part of it.
So your food waste, basically in a nutshell, it goes to a digester in Oxford, and there it's put into these drums that you can see on the picture on the top right, and inside there are little bugs, and the little bugs will eat the food waste and they'll produce gas, which we can then use to create electricity. And there's always a little bit of leftover, so it's something called digestate, which is then made into a biofertilizer. So there is no waste from your food waste. Anything that isn't broken down, the sort of sludge you can see the bottom left that comes out, that is given to farmers, and it's an industrial fertilizer for farmers to use. So all individual actions matter, but together we can play a part even stronger in the fight against climate change. So hopefully the talk that we've done and everything we've just showed you gives you an idea of how important it is that we work together to create a better climate, a better future for everyone else, and that we can recycle hopefully as much as possible at home, and that's the best place to start any of this. Wow, and then we're on to any questions. So I'm not sure if we're going to go through the chat.
I think, shall we, I'll come off sharing, and then everyone can start seeing each other a bit more easily,
Yeah.
then, can't they?
Hello, everyone. So I think our usual, so we're going to do through some questions that have been posted via chat, and then if we have some time, we would welcome some direct questions if there will be still some. So I've been just scrolling through our chat, and thanks so much for some questions being posted already and feedback given, so we will all make sure that going to be noted. So we have a question from Sandra about the PPE waste from the various type of sectors. Do we have any plans to remove that sort of plastic waste, which obviously includes medication waste, from landfill?
It's a tricky one, isn't it, Laura? Because we don't tend to get that stuff.
No, and I think obviously some sort of medication waste and where PPE would come from, the sectors that it comes from, like hospitals, for example, they have different rules because it could potentially be hazardous, so it can't always be recycled in the same way. Because I know there's one of the things that we do have to we have to put to landfill, for example, is asbestos, because it is extremely hazardous and there's unfortunately no other way of disposing of it safely. So I think that's sort of the problem that we have with PPE at the minute, and the plastic in that is the hazardous regulations around disposing of it.
That's Sandra. Hi. I'm thinking about the care sector where there isn't an issue with hazardous waste, but which they use, there's so much used per household. So on average, perhaps 3 pairs of gloves per just cared for household, an apron, masks, sometimes shoe covers, all of which are plastic. So if that's in a household, could you add those aprons, gloves, etc.? Are they recyclable? Could they be put into the recycle bag or not? I'm aware of the issues with hazardous waste in hospitals. Also, blister packs, for example, they look aluminium, but they're coated with plastic. So I'm assuming we can't recycle those. So for people that have got a lot of medication, obviously the cardboard is recyclable, but the actual things like blister packs and such, because there's so much generated and so much waste from that. And I'm just thinking, if there isn't an option, would the council be willing to investigate options so that people are not throwing away so much from medication they use, please?
I think it's a really good question, and I think, Sandra, we'll have to do as you say. We will have to investigate that, because I appreciate actually it's a kind of overlap almost between the domestic waste that we would normally collect from households and then the sort of care sector in its own right, a hospital or a home or somewhere like that. But what you're talking about is actually where those two things overlap, and it is in the home. So I think we'll have to look into that. I don't know anything about it, and I don't know if Laura does, but it's certainly something that I think you've highlighted a really important point, and I'm sure there's enough of it to warrant us having an investigation. It will be down to the same sorts of principles as we have talked about throughout this, really, which is, can it be recycled? We know that things like the kind of sort of bibs, or whatever you might call them, protective kind of to protect clothes, those sorts of things, soft plastics, that is probably fairly promptly going to become something that people are looking to recycle. The sort of almost latex or whatever they are, rubber gloves, that might be more problematic, and things like the blister packs, that must be something that people are looking into at the moment. So I think we'll need to have a look into that, but we will do that for the reasons I've set out. That I think it's more and more the case that it's coming into our kind of the council's sphere of what we can do and what we could be expected to do. So that's a really good question. I'm sorry I haven't got a better answer, but we will look into it.
Can you post anything, any updates on that, please, on your website? Because I do follow that, and I'm sure lots of people would be interested, because a lot of us are really concerned about how much we personally generate if we are needing to use a medication, a fair amount, and what we can do about it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we will do. And again, thanks for the question. So yeah, between us, we'll make sure there's something up on the website ASAP.
Yeah, my husband uses he's got a catheter, so there's lots of bags every week, and they, I rinse them, but obviously they go in the bin.
Yeah, we'll have a look at all of those things. Right, Monica, do you want to take us through the chat questions, and then we'll get to a more of a kind of discussion between all of us after that?
Yeah, so the next questions are one probably of our favorites, tops. So various questions about tops on the milk bottles, tops on the metal tops on the jars, aluminium tops on the wine bottles, what to do with them. Laura, if you, or Oliver, if you're able to go through each of them individually, that would be good, please.
I think just the general message is for any tops on any sort of bottle, whether that's a wine bottle or a plastic bottle, can be left on. So if you've got a glass bottle or a glass jar, that can stay on and go into the recycling glass banks. If it's a plastic bottle and you're sending it in your bin to be sorted by us at the small mid centre, please leave the bottle tops on, because it all gets recycled.
Very good. I think that the only one we're asking to help us is the aluminium potentially cans, like sprays to remove the detachable plastic lid, and from the Tetra packs. So I think that's the two ones that we kindly ask to help out. The rest of them can stay. That's good. We had some question about the conflicting advice about whether aluminium cans should be squashed or not.
I have no preference, but if you squash them, you can fit more in your bin. So squash them.
That is what's going to happen to them anyway, isn't it? So
yeah, so you might as well, and then you can fit more recycling in there.
We also had some questions about the food waste, but more like collected from local shops. There's a council offer collections to small shops across Reading.
The council does offer collections, yeah, to small shops. So I think what we'll do is we can, when we follow up, we'll provide a sort of link to where you need to go for that information. And it's also quite an interesting development that's going to become more the norm, I think, as we go forward. There's a really large piece of legislation going through at the moment called the Environment Bill, which is going to be massive, and part of that is around waste management. It's meant to be covering the whole sort of range of environmental issues, but the part that talks about waste is going to make it much easier for councils and their contractors to collect a mixture of household and business waste. So it should make it a lot easier for councils to be able to serve small and medium enterprises, restaurants, shops, those sorts of things alongside you as residents. So that should be good news.
We have further question about the food waste. So was a question from Carol, roughly how much food waste is now being collected each week?
It's about 20,000 tonnes a year, isn't it?
Yeah. So if anyone's got maths.
You can work it out yourselves, guys.
It's fairly a lot.
It is a lot, yeah. It's a lot more than we thought we were going to collect. So that's why we're, I think we're delighted on behalf of everyone in the RE3 area that everyone's doing so well.
And what happens to the plastic bags that food waste is in it?
So they're removed at the beginning of the process when it gets to the digester plant in Oxford. They're removed at the beginning and recycled separately by the digester plant.
Yeah, and any plastic is basically sent to energy from waste.
Yeah.
So so that at least their energy is recovered. Laura, is one for you. Why is plastic so hard to recycle?
So black plastic is hard to recycle because in the plant and in most recycling plants, we use a piece of machinery called optical sorters, and they are infrared sensors that shoot light onto all the material, and then depending how the light refracts off of it depends what type of material it is, and then the plant very intelligently will put it in the right place. But plastic is so hard because the sensors can't see it. So that's the simple reason why it can't see it, so it can't send it to the right place. There's also not a market for black plastic to be recycled because we're trying to push it off the shelves, and you see it a lot less nowadays. In supermarkets, for example, there isn't a market to recycle it and turn it back into another product because everyone's trying their hardest to get away from it. So another reason why it's hard to recycle.
We had a question from John about the compostable bags, what shall we do with them, that they not compost very well in a compost heap. So because I don't know if I could answer that, but I think that's the issue, that not whatever is branded compostable doesn't mean that it actually can be composted. That's why we're asking not to put it into a food waste or garden waste bin, but because if it's a bag, you can use it as a caddy liner. Basically, it will be removed from the process, but at least it's going to be a use for it. Unfortunately, any manufacturer probably would say that you can use it at home, but that's what we're hearing as well, that unfortunately not all compostable bags will compost very well on your in your home. It's a little bit tricky now. Let me there's a question from Shirley about why does RE3 not recycle the waste from litter bins on streets? Oliver, would you be able to?
Yeah, well, we do in some cases. The slight problem with litter bins is that there tends to be so much contamination in them that it is more difficult. But we do have on-street recycling bins. We do take the stuff from those and we do recycle it. So you'll all appreciate, I suppose.
That's interesting. So the bins in Reading, which are the dual recycle bins, the recycling element of that is recycled as far as possible. I live in Wokingham Borough and we don't have on-street recycling bins, and I'm trying to get them to put in on-street recycling bins, because I see bins in our borough, normal bins, that are actually bulging with cans and plastic. And I don't believe that RE3 takes Wokingham Borough's bin street rubbish, is that right? From its litter bins?
We do receive the waste, but it doesn't come in as one of the kind of deliveries that we would recycle. No, so you're right.
That will go to the incinerator at Colnbrook.
Yes.
Yeah, so it will go to energy. It's just I see these bins bulging, absolutely bulging with plastic bottles and cans, and it's very frustrating. Hopefully it's something that RE3 will be addressing, perhaps with all the councils sooner rather than later.
It's certainly something that we can have a chat with them about. And it is really, as Laura said, really around the need to make sure that we're not having to deal with far too much contamination. When you have your collection from home, you are doing part of the job, and that's one of the sort of points I suppose we're making. But obviously when people are putting stuff in the litter bin is there for a fundamentally different purpose, which is really to give people who might otherwise just drop their litter wherever they're stood, to give them a legitimate and give them no place to just drop it, really. So although there is a clear overlap here, again, the sort of fundamental different purpose of the two things is probably what's causing the principal problem.
Yeah, you may well be right, but I'd be interested to know if there's any data on how well they work in Reading Town Centre in terms of what percentage of the waste is actually recycled from those ones with the dual bins that you've got in the town.
Yeah, in effect, we're just trying to create the same as your now bags, but your recycling boxes in the street in Reading.
Yeah, but I'd be interested to know how much of the actual on those in the town centre you've got dual bins, normal litter and recycling, and I just wonder how much of that recycling is actually contaminated.
Yeah, I'm afraid, Shirley, I don't know the answer to that here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, I was labouring the point there. Thank you.
No, not at all.
A question probably to Laura. So Jeremy is making a point, or ask that obviously we accept certain items at the recycling center, but not obviously at the curbside. So, for example, hard plastic, general steel items, that it perhaps makes sense for us to accept it straight away. Rather, it's less pollution to drive with the certain single items to the recycling center. Could you just take that, why we not accept everything, but certain items need to go to the recycling center?
Yeah, no problem. So I understand what Jeremy's saying. Unfortunately, the plant is designed to cope with the rubbish that we ask you guys to recycle. So the plastic, the steel cans, alley cans, paper, cardboard, for example. It's designed to deal with that waste. If we have waste which it's not designed for, such as I'm trying to think of things that we get through. We've had like pots and pans, microwaves, irons, for example, which can all be recycled if you take them to the recycling centre next door. But if they go through the MRF, they cause a lot of damage to the machine, which can then cause us to be down for, it could be anything from a couple of hours to a couple of days to potentially even a couple of weeks if somebody puts something in their bin which can't be accepted. It causes a lot of damage, which means then we aren't able to recycle everything else that we do accept, and then also then impacts on what you guys as residents are trying to do and what you're trying to achieve by recycling the right items. So while I appreciate the point that it may make more sense so you don't have to get in the car and drive somewhere, it wouldn't be beneficial for us because then we wouldn't be able to recycle everything else that we need to. So I would suggest that if you do have a couple of bits, I just collect them up until you've got enough, and then you make the trip worthwhile coming to our recycling centre.
That's a really good point. And I think the main thing is that we're trying to operate, that the recycling plant operates at such a large scale that we have to accept that there's going to be a limit to how specific it can be. So we have to target those broad classes of material: plastic bottles, cans, newspapers and magazines, cardboard. And we then struggle a little bit, as the question identifies, when people say, what about this particular item? So that's where the recycling centres come in. And I think Laura's point, and again, I think neither of us are sort of making light or treating it lightly, is a really good point. And if we could effectively have one large machine that could sort everything out, then that probably would have a lot going for it. It would be quite a good idea. But it is literally just the scale. We're talking about nearly 500,000 people's waste that we're looking at and that we need to try and process. So it is that scale that perhaps sometimes causes a little bit of problem in terms of those really specific points.
We had a few comments and more like a feedback to provide people with more information, that if the bins are like either it's a shared houses and they need more capacity in the recycling, that they will get more information, that they can get a free recycling bin or additional ones. So I will pass that feedback to my colleagues in the comms team, so they will definitely talk to residents a bit more about that. It's a very good, valid point. What's happened to dog waste bins, the ones that we can see in the parks or on the streets?
I think that's just treated like litter. I mean, we certainly can't recycle dog waste, unfortunately. I think people would probably appreciate that if we were to put that either in our composting or through our food waste process, which are the two principal routes that we might send that biodegradable waste, there may be some issues over the acceptability of the product as it comes out. So there is a question around, whether people would want to put composted dog waste on their garden. Might be okay, and there might be some people who'd be more than happy to. I'm sure there are, but I think there would be some question marks, and similarly with our food waste process as well. So that will still be treated as litter at the moment and disposed of.
Mark is asking whether we could arrange, I imagine, as mini tips or recycling centers in estates for those of people who doesn't have a car.
It's a it's a really interesting question. I know it's something that the councils have looked at in the past and probably will look at again in the future. The only problem I would foresee, and certainly has been a problem in the past and something to work around rather than being an actual barrier to this happening, is that if you have a mini tip in an estate, even if it's a mobile one, even if it's a temporary one, you do tend to find that other people think, oh, right, that's the place where I can go and dump stuff. They don't necessarily wait for the truck to be there or for the day when the collection will be. They just take it as read that that's the place they can dump stuff throughout the week. So that's a hurdle to get over rather than a barrier to it happening. And I know that they do it elsewhere. So I think probably it's a case of watch this space. But I do know that the councils are conscious that there are some problems for people that don't have cars or don't readily have access to a car.
Mm-hmm. And on that note as well, what happens to large electrical items such as TV, Laura?
So TVs are sort of stripped, I guess is the best term for it. So obviously they've got lots of different components inside, different types of metal. So the company that we send the TVs to, which is another local company, they will take the TVs apart and they will recycle the individual components and different types of material inside the TV.
Mm-hmm. And what happens to the wet cardboard and paper?
So because of the lovely new bags that we have in Wokingham, for example, that problem is becoming less of a problem, I guess. We have a lot less wet paper and cardboard because people are using their bags that were introduced last year, which is great. But if the material was too wet, for example, then it wouldn't be recycled in the MRF and it would be taken to energy from waste instead. So it would be used to create energy, so still serving a good purpose, but it unfortunately wouldn't be recycled in the plant that we have because it would contaminate the other material and then everybody else's dry material wouldn't be able to be recycled.
We had a few questions about the blue bags in Wokingham, what to do with the excess if someone don't need them, or why do actually they need to double wrap it, because obviously they got they're using the bin liners and then obviously putting everything in a blue bin. I'll probably pass these comments directly to Wokingham councils and inform about that feedback, because that's obviously a service that it's being provided.
I'm actually excuse me, Monica, I'm actually a borough councillor in Wokingham. And if you've got an excess of those bags, you can drop them back at the libraries. The local libraries will take them. And then people who need to get extra ones because they've got a large household can get them from the libraries. So if you've got a build up of them, that's the best thing to do. Okay.
Thanks.
Very good. Thanks so much. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, further feedback about those mini tips, mini recycling centers, especially to get the help for perhaps disabled people as well. So it's just a follow up on the previous one. So definitely noted by us, and we'll take this into having this in mind in our conversation. Something about the textiles from Caroline, that she is saying that she donates clothes to charity shops, but what should what she can do with rags and really old stuff? Is this going directly to the rubbish, or it still should go to the textiles bins?
I'd still put it in the textile bins. I think I'm right in saying, Laura, they will make sort of there will be some separation between those items which can be reused. So items of clothing that could possibly be reused, and those items of what we might call material that can't be reused and might only be used for rags or for some other purpose.
Yeah, definitely. They, I said they do go through quite a rigorous process of sorting out whether it's good enough, let's say, to be worn by somebody else again, or whether it can't be, and then in that case, it's still used in one way or another.
Exactly. And question about the soft plastics. First of all, what we do to help minimize the excess of soft plastic packaging, especially with the online orders, and or on our local grant, are the plans to expand the service to include soft plastic into our recycling?
This is going to be another boring legislation one, I'm afraid, because I think one of the things that the government's planning to do, and I think, you know, should be applauded, is within the next 3 to 5 years, it will be required that councils are collecting plastics. Now, for those of you who, from Laura and my point of view, waste collection is the dead easy bit, and apologies, Donna, if you're still on the call, but actually the harder bit is what you do with it, because that's where the environmental impact comes from. So it will be dead easy for us to collect soft plastics in the future, and I'm only partly joking about it is easy to collect, but that's the bit that we can do. We know we've got the vehicles, we've got the staff, we can go out there and we can collect soft plastics. The really important part will be to make sure that there are places for the soft plastics to go so that it will be recycled. And I suppose really if we'd been having this call 5 years ago, we might have been talking about that in terms of cartons, pots, tubs and trays. So it can move on. We're now, happily recycling all of those things within the UK as we've described. And the important point will be for us sort of within the UK, or ideally within the near part of continental Europe, when we're talking about climate change impacts, it's really important that we're not having to drive that sort of stuff or haul it long distances. So I think that's got to be the next stage, which is to make sure there's an outlet for soft plastics. But that is certainly on the agenda. So it may be a little while before we can definitely do that, but it's happening. It's going to happen.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. And I believe Tia, I think, asked about whether we could offer any training. She works at care homes, and they would probably like their staff to be trained in recycling, so they could help the residents. Personally, I don't have any issues with that, so it will be whatever email I would send the presentation, please come back to us, and then we will try to arrange it. I'm sure we could support it, myself or Oliver, to help out with that. I think I managed to go pretty much through all. If I missed, I'm really, really sorry. We got a few more minutes, I believe, and quite a few of us are still on the call. So if anyone would like to share their thoughts or ask questions, please either unmute yourself or raise the hand, and then we will call you out.
I would like to ask about education for children, because I know that once you educate children at a young age, these are habits that would continue for life. So what initiatives is being done or organized by yourselves in schools and other educational facilities which are training children and young people to be responsible where their waste is concerned? Thank you.
It's a really good question. We're not actually doing anything specific at the moment. We would provide support to schools if they come forward. But unfortunately, it's just an unfortunate and at the moment unavoidable suppose lack of resources. There's lots of stuff that the individual councils do, but again, principally where they are asked to provide support. And equally, I know that within schools they are doing things. So I suppose really the answer to your question, Sandra, is that it's perhaps not happening by being dictated, but it is happening where the schools come forward, and I know that many do. So they are picking up those bits of information. By the same token, I agree with you that it is quite nice to have that element in their education specifically, even if when, you know, as teenagers or whatever, they might rebel a little bit, it still lays down a foundation of understanding of why these things are important, as you know, to all of us as good neighbors.
Yeah, some resources that have been created by organizations like Recycle Now, they are provided on our website. It is linked to them, so I will share that as well. But certainly at the moment, we are happy to help and respond on the basis that someone will reach out. But those generic resources are there, so teacher can pick up the right activities for the right age. So hopefully that could be some sort of a help. I have missed a question from Helen, sorry. It was about the sellotape, whether it contaminates paper and it has to be removed.
So a small amount of sellotape is fine. If it's, you know, wrapped like how my mum tends to wrap parcels that she sends to me from up north, she tends to put too much sellotape on. So I do try to remove as much of that as possible. But if it's just a little bit, then I wouldn't worry about it. But nothing too excessive, please.
We've got a lady in the post office where I live who we're all frightened of, because she kind of raises her eyebrow if it's too sellotaped, and it's awful. You feel like you've been told off. So everyone, remember.
I think there's a question. Somebody got their hand up.
Yeah, hello. I was just going back to somebody asked about could there be mini tips for people who haven't got cars. Well, I'm a member or a resident in Wokingham Borough, and I don't know if it was organised by our parish council or Wokingham itself, but we used to have one of those refuse lorries came on a Saturday, about once every 2 months, and everyone knew when it was coming, and it stayed at 4 or 5 different places within our parish area for the residents that lived close by that place could bring their rubbish. So they used to come with wheelbarrows and things and put the rubbish into the refuse lorry, and after a couple of hours it moved to the next one and the next one and the next one, and it was just once every 2 months. And I don't know why it stopped happening, but it's not happened for quite a long time now, but it was quite popular and quite well used, and, you know, particularly for elderly residents who don't have cars. And, you know, some people don't have the facility to store piles of rubbish until there's a carload full to take as well, you know, because you'll be using your whole garage up in some cases, and some people don't have garages anyway. So yeah, would that be a way of doing it again?
Certainly would be a way of doing it again, and there must be a reason. I'm afraid I don't know either exactly why Wokingham stopped. I can only imagine that perhaps it was, perhaps one of the things was that people got familiar with where the sites are and started taking stuff there before the vehicles got there. But yeah, it's definitely stopped. You're right.
Yeah, but they didn't stop. They didn't stop because it's one of the spots was outside my house, and nobody ever came there and left stuff there. And because it was a lorry, the man who was in the lorry could check what they were putting in. So you couldn't put things that were inappropriate in there, like dog mess. So it was pretty well policed, and I don't really know why it stopped. Maybe it was council cuts, or, you know, because the central government cut money funding, didn't they, to councils, or said you have to take on more responsibility and we're not giving you any more money. Maybe it was like a finance issue.
Yeah,
where it had to be stopped. But, you know, because we get so much fly tipping now, particularly in my area, we get an awful lot of fly tipping, which costs a lot of money to clear up. But I suppose that's not the residents doing that in any case, so that might still go on.
Yeah, but people don't tend to do it literally on their own doorstep, do they?
No.
You're right.
We had some question about expanding the list of items could be recycled. For example, the spray bottle when you cannot remove the spray. So yeah, so that's correct. We're asking to remove spray and triggers. However, Laura, I think that our rigid plastic will take now the spray, the trigger top separately. If you're making a trip to our recycling center, then you can include it. Alternatively, I think triggers top can be taken to local TerraCycler operating locally. But question to you, Laura, well, how clean is clean basically? How thoroughly do we need to wash cans and things like that?
I think just a rinse would be the best option. Don't have to put it in your dishwasher or get the rubber gloves out or anything like that. Just a nice quick swill out through some clean water from the tap, that'll do.
Mm-hmm. Some lovely comments about the staff at the small meat. Thank you so much. That's always really, really nice to hear. Yeah, John is bringing up the problem of waste created following events, for example, Reading Festival, especially because it takes place quite close to the river. Can we influence any of the problems of the waste that is generated through the, through the large events like that to ensure that it's not going to end up in our river streams? I know personally it was a big cleanup. I haven't attended the festival, but I saw images of a huge cleanup cruise after that. But yeah, in terms of influence, I imagine festival on its own doing quite a lot to help out to ensure that whoever attends are a bit conscious about what to do with the waste.
We can certainly pass that in. That's really handy that there was stuff left there days afterwards. So we'll pass that on to the council sort of street cleansing team who deal with all the stuff outside of the festival site. The festival organisers deal with all the stuff that's inside the festival site. So we'll pass that on and make sure that's feedback they get. So thanks, John.
I think the problem there was that the site goes up quite close to the river along the Thames path. So there's probably about a kilometre of fence, which is not that easy to access. So I went along there on the Wednesday, and whilst the site had been cleared and other areas had been cleared, all along there was just horrendous. It was terrible. And it's right against the river. So, basically that stuff had been going into the river for many days. And there's nothing being done. I don't know when they did clear it up eventually, maybe when they took the fences down, but if they take the fences down, it can be a week or two after they've finished the festival. So
yeah.
And yeah, Tia has the follow-up about that washing and making sure that the items are clean. And obviously she's hearing about some people who are a bit annoyed about the fact they're using water to clean their recycling. So it is that finding out the balance. We do hope that, the fact that, when you're washing up some other items, use the already used water potentially to rinse it, to minimize the water use. But certainly, as Laura said, we do not want the shiny thing. As long as make sure that it's no food in it. I think that's the biggest principle of washing. The end of your washing up water is usually fine. Exactly. Yeah. So that's that's the way to do it. It's just the tweaking habits and daily routine, I believe.
Okay, there was a question from Muriel there about going to the recycling centres and whether or not the staff there can help out. I think I'm right in saying, Laura, that was a problem for a while because obviously everyone was socially distancing, but that we're back now. If people need help, obviously if you can load up your car, then you can probably unload your car. But if anyone does need any help, then they should ask staff when they're at the recycling centre, and we will do what we can to help them. Absolutely. So that was just that question there from Muriel.
Yeah, definitely. I think the staff are still conscious that some people may want to still social distance, which is why we're asking that if you would like help, that you go and ask them for it, because they're very aware of the fact that not everyone wants to be approached still with what's going on. So if you do want help, then they are absolutely more than happy to help you.
Perfect. So I think that probably concludes all of the questions. As I said, I really apologize for the videos, and they will be included in that recording in a hopefully great shape. And if not, I will also send separately some links. And yeah, the entire presentation and the recording as well will be made available to all of you at some point next week, if that's okay. So please check your inboxes, and I'm very grateful for all of you to join us today. And over to Oliver and Laura, closing please.
I'm just going to say have a lovely Friday afternoon, and thanks for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed the Climate Change Festival, and thank you very much.
Yeah, same from me. Thank you, everyone. If you think of any more questions, then you can send them to the email address that Monica has already put on there, and we'll be more than happy to answer any that we can. But yeah, have a lovely weekend.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.